with the weekend and a lot of traditional companies taking weekends off, these Monday episodes, there isn't really as many huge monster topics to talk about on the show. And as I was looking for one, usually I'm using Twitter to find topics, which I don't think I've talked about that on the show, and I don't think that's a spoiler or the shock to anybody. But there really wasn't much this week. I mean, the NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, those both got underway, but I don't know. I mean, I think we're in a different place within cards where the playoffs aren't going to have as much of an effect on cards, especially right now with the NBA. I mean, I think the Celtics are probably the favorites to win. The Nuggets are the second favorite. So it's really, I don't know. It's between them two, hopefully. I mean, obviously, as a Celtics fan, I'm hoping it's the Celtics. I think the team is, they were the number one team in the NBA, not even just in the Eastern Conference. And they won the Eastern Conference by like 14 games, which is absolutely insane. And they have a road to the Eastern Conference Finals if they, can put away Actually, I'm not going to get into Celtics. This isn't a Celtics podcast, but the playoffs now, I don't know how much more of an effect, or I don't know how much of an effect it's going to have on card prices. I mean, Tatum is probably the only player where I could see there being a really massive effect, just because he's part of sort of a modern era and maybe Brown because he was drafted the year before, but other than those two, I don't know. I'm not sure we're going to see a massive effect on cards, because I think we've also switched the way that people are buying and selling cards as well. Like, I've talked about how I think a lot of the reactive money has moved away from the hobby, or it's either that, or it's some of the reactive money has just become smarter, I think, within the hobby, and that's just what ends up happening. Like, as you get more into sports cards, you get smarter, and you learn more, and you aren't, the nuances, I think, are easier to pick up on nowadays than they were in the past. I think because of all the content that's being produced, and I think there's articles being written every day teaching people where to navigate sports cards, basically. And that gets me sort of into the topic, I guess. I mean, it's kind of, there isn't really a specific topic, but it was something that I saw on Twitter. So it was at SE Uncensored, basically was posting about how a lot of people on social media think that social media is the center of the hobby universe, and the IG and Twitter being mainly what we consume as content. But they were saying you don't realize how many people are not on traditional hobby social media until you see posts on Facebook groups and stuff that people are really oblivious to, which I think, I'm wondering, like, this is sort of an interesting kind of concept to me, because I think that there's that concept. There's also, there's the blowout forum, which I still think people probably use. There's Reddit. I don't know as many people. I've kind of used Reddit occasionally. It's not as popular, I think, as maybe some other industries' Reddits, if I'm going to be honest. It's a lot of, posting cards. Not as much discussion really going on there. But then you say there's Instagram, Twitter. I think those are probably similar, in a similar boat. And then you just have people who just aren't on social media at all. And I think it's very, not reminiscent, but it's very similar to like how we see sort of just different parts of different places where people are interested in sports cards, but they just don't, they don't interact at all. They don't, the people on Instagram and Twitter, most of them probably aren't going to Reddit or the blowout forums, or some of the people who, some of the old school people that go to shows, who just aren't on social media, they'll just never be on social media. Like, it's really to a point where it's like anybody, unless you're like a child, that would be the only scenario here, I think, where, most people that aren't on social media at this point, like, it's a large enough concept that if you're not on social media at this point, you're probably just not going to be on it at all. And that's, in my opinion, I think you're just not going to see like I said, old school people who go to shows or old school people who are into sports cards really get into those cards. But then there's just people who they use social media, but they're not on like card social media. So like for example, like, there's people who are buying those cards that are the first ones coming out of the boxes, for, way more than you should. And I think it just puts it into perspective that like, although, people listening to this podcast, I think have a pretty good grasp on how they enjoy the hobby and how they enjoy cards in general. There's people who are also the same people, they just enjoy different things. And I think we don't realize that sometimes within sports cards, that like, just because you don't like a certain thing doesn't mean that other people don't like it also. I think that's maybe what I'm trying to say. There are people who, for all the things that you don't like, there are people that like that thing. So and it almost gets to sometimes where it's like, we see on social media so many people complaining about stuff, and it's like, if you are in, and it's why I don't know, I try to stay away from negative stuff on social media, just because somebody who enjoys that thing that people are complaining about, like, that's probably pretty discouraging. Like, there's been many times where I've seen people talking down on things that I like within this hobby, and even for myself, it bums me out, because I'm like, well, what, people don't have anything better to do than to just complain about something, like, which in some cases people just don't, and that's maybe another scenario. It's like people, they work their 9 to 5s, or they have some sort of day job, or they work or they're working like a night shift, and it's like all they do have is time. All they have is time to complain about anything that they're looking to complain about, using social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, whatever social media you're looking to complain on. But I just think it's very interesting that we, within this hobby, we feel like the thing that we like about it is the thing that everyone likes about it. Or it's like the thing that the community that we're in, we feel like we are the center, which that's what kind of the other point. It's like in the tweet says, we often think IG and Twitter are the center of the hobby universe, but there are so many more planets in this universe, which that is, like I said, I 100% agree. I think that's one of the great parts about sports cards, is that there are hundreds and thousands, maybe potentially, of different types of products that you can buy and be interested in. And once you find that niche, you're most likely going to find other people who are also interested in that thing. And maybe it's blocking out the people who are complaining about it. It's like you don't really care about what they're saying. And I think that's a good sentiment when you are enjoying something. It's just to realize that, like, if you enjoy something, that should be good enough. And I understand that, and for myself, for sure, this is the case, where it's like, when I enjoy something, I want to tell as many people as I can about the thing that I'm enjoying, because I want them also to enjoy it. If I enjoy it, then I feel like other people might. But if they don't, that's not a me problem. That's not something that I'm doing, incorrect, or, whatever. That's just something that, like, people just don't like it. There's certain types of music people don't like. There's certain types of movies that people don't like. And it's not that there's anything wrong with those movies or the music. It's just that, people have their tastes, and they like what they like, and they don't like what they don't like. So, kind of, I guess, wrapping up the show a little bit, it's just, without as much news, it's sort of me kind of pontificating and, ranting about just stuff in general here within cards and within the community in general. I think it's also good to just remind yourself that, like, this isn't that serious. And I know I talked about that on probably Friday's episode, where people are getting angry at that kid, and it's like, this is supposed to be fun. Like, it's a hobby for people that are, it's a hobby for a reason. Like, for some people it is a business, but for people who are complaining about it, it's more of a hobby, because I don't know. I find it hard. No, actually, well, I mean, there are probably people on social media that do complain, and that is how they make their living, essentially, complaining about stuff. And I think, I don't know, I guess it happens within our industry. I don't know if it necessarily happens outside of our industry as much, and it probably is just something where I'm more aware of it because I'm studying what people are doing and who's in the industry and all these types of things. So, my last message here is just enjoy the hobby the way that you want to enjoy it. Engage in the communities that you want to engage in. And if you find yourself, getting into something where you don't like it, that's the great part about sports cards, is you can sell whatever you have of that thing and then move on to another thing if you want to. And you don't really have to worry about doing it the wrong way. I think that's one of the, like I said, one of the great parts about the hobby is you can do it the way that you want to do it. And if you want to follow someone's advice, that's great. Or if you don't want to follow anybody's advice and you want to go your own path, that's also great. So maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong here, but so the big news for today was there have been some Tim Duncan autographs on sports cards that have, I guess Panini maybe posted these images. I don't know if they're live, they're on Card Auto, so they must be in the products. But I thought that, and then I saw Panini posted about that he is back and they signed him, but I thought that this was older news and that he had already signed, but I'm thinking about it, maybe it must have been another player, but I don't really know one way or the other. But I think this is probably what we're going to see, if I'm going to be honest, over the next few years from Panini, is they're going to be signing people like older players, and I actually have a feeling like they're still going to come out with basketball products, but they're going to come out with like exquisite style basketball products where it's like you can't really see the player's uniform, or they're just going to use they're going to use pictures of players of them not even in uniform. But I think that this is a big change I think it's a big change that has been happening and that probably will continue to happen over the next few years within cards, is that I think players have become a lot smarter when it comes to how much money they can really make from signing these cards. Like, I don't think they were necessarily making small amounts of money, but the amount of like exclusive contracts we saw even just 4 or 5 years ago, I feel like it wasn't as much. And now we're seeing, players jumping ship and taking more money from other companies where they're not even going to be, we're seeing the quarterbacks, which Topps is mainly doing this. It's mainly Topps signing basketball and football players away from Panini. But I think, over the next few years, this is what I think is going to have to start happening with a lot of players. And I think the exclusive contracts are probably going to have to be part of a lot of companies' business models nowadays, or in the future now and in the future, because the money that I think players know nowadays that they can be making, like, and if you're a player's agent, sports cards, I feel like has to be an area that at least a decent amount about, because of the amount of, like I said, the amount of money that these players should be making from these autographs. Because if, back in the day, Zion, he signed an exclusive with Panini, I believe, but his autographs were going for crazy amounts. So it's like if I am a player and I know how much my autograph is going to cost, or how much it should cost, which that has to be probably a piece of the agent. The agent should know this. The players, I don't know. I think realistically, that maybe this is coming up from a perspective of somebody who isn't like a millionaire. The players should probably know the types of businesses that that their brand is associated with. But like the agents are really the ones that should know the nitty gritty about, like, hey, Topps is going to offer this much, Panini's going to offer this much. If you sign, and then the other crazy thing is that, like, if you sign with Topps, like, I bet you the per autograph, Topps is probably a better deal for a lot of these players, because, like, another player, I think it was Fred Lynn, I forget who posted this. I know Fred Lynn posted it, but I saw someone retweeted it, or it showed up on my For You page on Twitter, which the For You page on Twitter has got to be the worst news feed of all. It's got to be one of the worst news feeds of all time. Like, it really is just the worst of the worst type of content that you could possibly think of will end up on this. The content that you are the least interested in, that's the most popular, will end up on that feed, and it really is insane. But so Fred Lynn, he posted a picture of him signing for Topps in, I don't remember what product it was, but there were so many cards there, and he's not even a prospect. So, there have been pictures of prospects. They've put pictures of their cards that they're signing on, like, their Instagrams and stuff. And the amount of cards that they're signing is, like, astronomically absurd. Like, it really, I don't think we really put into perspective how many cards these players are signing. And what that means is how much product there is. Because if, you know, in Bowman or whatever, and I believe it was Bowman, the example that I'm using for the player that I saw posted on Instagram, Fred Lynn, when he posted his picture, there were so many cards spread out all over the table. Like, it really was absurd. I was like looking at them, and I didn't even count them because I was just like, there's just so many. It's like, it's crazy how many there were. But the players and the amount of cards and products that are being made, like, the players, they have to know. Like, before social media, I'm sure players didn't really know what the price of their autographs were going for, or the prices of a lot of the things that they were signing. They probably didn't know. But with the amount of social media that is consumed by younger players nowadays, I mean, the amount that I consume is crazy. I'm sure that these players, they grew up on it. Like, I even kind of grew up on it. Like, I was in high school when social media really took off. Twitter, pretty much, more specifically. But like, when I was in high school, these players who are, you know, 18, 19, 20 coming into the league now, at that point, they were 4 or 5 years old, and when they're getting to high school, it's like they've already had social media probably when they were in like middle school. Like, they were on Twitter when they were in like 5th or 6th grade, most likely. As soon as they got smartphones, they're on, you know, whatever social media will allow them to as minors. But that means they have to know how much some of their autos are selling for. There's no way that they're oblivious to the pricing of some of these crazy cards that are being signed. And Tim Duncan, like I said, I think this is what we're going to see a lot of from Panini over the next few years, is a lot of like older players signing exclusives with Panini, and they're going to be coming out with, I guess, non-licensed autograph products. I mean, I don't even know what Panini could be thinking right now when it comes to like what their business strategy is going to be once they lose the licenses for football and basketball. Like, I mean, it's really like, it's insane to think what they could even be planning, because I can't even fathom, like, if you are a business and, you know, 75 to 80% of your business is going to become like almost non-viable. Like, the products that you're making are going to become almost non-viable, not valuable. Valuable maybe as well, but non-viable in the next 5 years. Like, so I think that they're going to have to figure out a way to supplement the loss that they're going to have of a lot of these base products with, I think they're going to start trying to double and triple down on a lot of these high-end exclusive products. That's where I see them going, in my opinion. Like, I think that's one of the only ways they can really do this. Like, they're not going to be able to come out with, you know, Prism Baseball is like, I don't even know if they come out with Prism Baseball anymore. Like, I know they came out with it for a few years. It's like so not interesting. Like, it really is pretty wild how like uninspiring that product is compared to some other products. And obviously that's because it's not licensed, and like, that's where some of the non-licensed I think stigma comes from. Like, people looking at, for example, like a Topps product that has basketball or has football that's non-licensed. That's where I think some of the stigma comes from, and I think it comes from Panini creating just garbage non-licensed products. Like, and that's just what it is, unfortunately. Like, sure, it's fun to break and fun to open. Like, you can probably find a decent amount of it for probably fairly inexpensive, but it's really just it's just not good. It's just not a good product. Like, you know, you look at, unfortunately, what they were. I guess you could look at Leaf. Maybe Leaf is an example of it being good, but like, Panini for quite some time was coming out with baseball products that, like, any of the non-high-end autograph baseball products were just really not good at all. And I think maybe Panini starts looking at like Leaf, and they say, well, Leaf is doing non-licensed products pretty well. So I don't know. I mean, maybe Leaf, Panini, they could come together there. I know that Leaf just sold, and like Brian Gray, I know, isn't the CEO, but he still kind of is affiliated with Leaf a little bit. But maybe Panini looks at that strategy and says, well, that's probably the way we need to go, and we need to take what Leaf has done and really try and replicate it in a way. Unfortunately, I just think over these past few years, Panini has really hurt their reputation by just really coming out with some pretty bad QC, some really like over-the-top amounts of printing. Like, and I know Topps has done this as well, but it's like if Panini is going to come out with more product, like, don't raise the prices and make sure that the product is like, you have to add a little bit of more QCing to this process, if I'm going to be honest. And I don't know, maybe Panini doesn't look at it that way. Maybe they look at it and say, we don't really care. Like I said, 75 to 80% of their business is going to be gone in a year anyways, or a couple years anyways. So maybe they look at it and just say, we're just going to come out with the products, and if people like them, they do. If they don't, they don't. But we are going to be completely changing our strategy over the next few years anyways. So the products that we're coming out with now, we're just going to come out with a ton of them, and we don't really care about what the product looks like or if people like it or not, because we've already pre-sold it. And I think this might be one of the issues with the distribution of cards in general is like, there's nothing stopping Panini from just opening up the printing and just printing as much as they can. So it's like, I think with Panini, they're going to have to probably take a bunch of different strategies, but I think signing players like Tim Duncan and signing old legends and getting them to sign some of these higher-end cards is probably going to be a viable strategy, but I guess we'll see what happens with Panini over the next few years as they start to lose all of their high-end licenses. So shout out to Danny and the team here at Hobbynewsdaily, because I think we broke a pretty big story last night, or 2 nights ago at this point, because if you're listening to this, depending on when you're listening to this, that PSA or eBay is dropping CGC as one of their authenticators, and PSA is going to be the sole authenticator for eBay. They originally had sent some cards to PSA for authentication because eBay had, which I didn't know if I liked the idea of eBay authenticating, cards if you were buying them at a certain price, which I think now I do like the idea, if I'm going to be honest, with the amount of, I don't know if fake cards necessarily is that large of an issue. I guess maybe if eBay probably has the data. Like, eBay has to have the data on how many cards are, people are buying cards on eBay and they're fake. So, it has to be something where there has to have been something where there was a tipping point where a certain amount of fake cards were being bought through eBay, I guess. Now, I don't know if you're eBay, I would say it's probably more important to crack down on like the accounts that are selling these fake cards rather than trying to authenticate the cards, in my opinion. But either way, so some cards were sent to PSA for authentication, and then some cards had been sent, or I guess it maybe depended on where the card was being bought, potentially, because they were also sending cards to CGC in Florida. So it probably had to do with where the card was being bought and sold. Like, there probably was some sort of algorithm or something that they had put together. But at least for now, eBay is dropping CGC, and according to the sources that we have, that they're trying to get by the end of the year that you're going to be able to buy a card on eBay and then send it directly to PSA without having to get it shipped to you. Which, eBay, PSA, that we heard that partnership with Golden, obviously, as well. Over the past few weeks, we had heard that partnership kind of coming to, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, really, I don't know if, I don't know. Like I said, I don't necessarily consume a ton of other hobby content because, or at least YouTube videos or podcasts. I mean, I'll occasionally tune into some people's streams or some people's content, but I do like to have my own opinion on stuff and kind of form my own opinion based on people's thoughts. And my opinion has always been that, like when I got back into sports cards, that I thought that there was going to have to be some sort of system where you could, which there is, you can buy and sell cards without touching them. I mean, if you go to, you go to Golden, you go to ComC, you go to any of these companies that have vaults, you can buy and sell cards without them ever getting shipped to you. And now you're going to be able to buy and sell cards and get them graded, most likely, hopefully at least, through PSA, which, I think I do get a little nervous, if I'm going to be honest, with the amount of consolidation, which I know, like I've said, is inevitable. I think consolidation is going to happen. But the top companies within this industry, the PSAs, which collectors or whatever, the Tops and Fanatics, like I just look at industries like the video game industry, with Madden having basically the exclusive license to make the game, and the game is just it's bad pretty much most years nowadays, because they know that people aren't necessarily playing the game to just play the game nowadays. Like, Madden Ultimate Team and opening packs and spending money on microtransactions within the game is one of the more lucrative pieces of any sports games and any video game industry business nowadays. And I think if you are an industry executive at a video game company, it would be, it would be, what's the word I'm looking for? Not that it's not in your best interest. What's the term I'm looking for? It would be negligence, maybe, to not try and incorporate that. I do think that there's an issue when games are built for that, which, if you've ever played a mobile game, most mobile games are built for microtransactions, unfortunately, nowadays. I think a lot of games, honestly, even on, you're playing PlayStation, or if you're on PC or Xbox or whatever, I think they're still built. A lot of games are built that way. I think it's much more mobile. But, Madden, for example, they are a game that they're basically just trying to make money. They're not really trying to make a good game, which I guess at some point you really have to look at, the gaming industry and say, well, what else could there even be? Like, they've come out with so many iterations of the game. How could they make it better? They really pretty much are just focusing on how they can make more money now, not necessarily how they can make the game better, which, like I said, I don't want to sit here and say that companies like Collectors or companies like Tops and Fanatics, Panini, maybe a little bit, but I still think we're pretty far away from Tops or Fanatics owning every single license. I just think that there's too many different entities of IPs for Tops or Fanatics to buy every single one, I suppose. So, I think ultimately we will always have options when it comes to what companies we want to be buying and selling, or buying sports cards from. But, Tops, Fanatics, Collectors, they are clearly trying to bring everything within their sort of ecosystem. Fanatics starting Fanatics Live. I don't know. I think it's a good thing, because I think that they are, they're still creating cards, which I think is never going to really not be a thing. But I think the collective between all of the companies, they really need to make sure that they're not getting lazy and not, I don't know, putting, and it is almost counterintuitive to say putting the company first before the customers, but I do feel like the sports card industry is one where, I don't know, it's going to be hard for customers really to, or it's going to be hard for these companies not to have the customers in mind when they're trying out new things. And like I said, we're going to continue to see it. And I think when we've seen, ComC, I don't know if they've grown. I think that they've grown, probably, but I still think that companies that have these vaults, they're going to continue to try and bring things all within house. And eBay and Collectors coming together makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're Tops and Fanatics, you can't really, I guess you could maybe partner with eBay in a sense, but it's like there's so many different cards that are being bought or so many different cards from different companies that are being bought. I don't think it's really possible for Fanatics to come in and be like, we're eBay is our company now, or something along those lines. So, like, I think the vaults, if I had to guess, we probably will see some sort of partnership between Fanatics and some company when it comes to building a vault, but I don't think we're going to see Fanatics really build their own vault. Like, I don't think we're ever going to see a Fanatics vault unless it's just for Fanatics or Topps cards. Like, I think that's where potentially we could see that. But, in general, I think we don't know if it's going to be good or bad. We don't know, if, EA, for example, we don't know if, like, the company is going to be built like EA. Like, we don't know if they're going to just try and create a super monopoly and try and really just try to make money on these IPs, and I don't think that they're going to do that. I mean, I think that there's enough, I hope so at least, I hope there's enough voices within the industry that we would be able to make sure something like that doesn't happen. But for now, it looks like eBay is going to be dropping SGC as their main authentication partner. And, by the end of the year, like I said, you may be able to go and buy cards, raw cards on eBay, and then send them directly to PSA. I think that's inevitable. I think that's something that's probably inevitable, if I'm going to be honest. I hope that they, continue to include customer feedback in these things, which I think PSA has done a fine job at, if I'm going to be honest. I think there are probably areas, like if I were to brainstorm, that they could do a better job at, but at least for now, I think eBay, Fanatics, collectors, we're still in such an early stage that I don't know if we know right now whether this is going to be successful or not. I hope it is. I mean, this is kind of my thought process, too, within the hobby. I'm always optimistic that these companies are going to be doing the right thing and that it's going to be a good thing for sports cards, because as a content creator, that's sort of, I'm reliant on that kind of stuff happening. So I think it will go well. I'm hoping that it goes well. I know you'll probably see people on whatever social media talking about it not being important or not being a big deal. I don't know. I think it is kind of a big deal, or they're going to talk about how that it's not a good thing. I think right now, I hope that it is, but I don't necessarily know one way or the other if this is going to be a successful partnership. I think it probably will be, but we're going to have to wait and see over the next year or so. Today's episode, we've got a couple rapid-fire topics I'll get to. No, I guess it'll be kind of rapid-fire. I mean, we'll see how long each one ends up going. But some of the news that has kind of come about the past couple days. I think one that is, if you're a soccer collector or you're a soccer fan, Oliver Giroud, and I know I might have pronounced his first name wrong maybe there, but he's a player that played for Chelsea when they won the Champions League. So obviously a guy that I've known for a little bit. And then he actually went and played with AC Milan with Christian Pulisic. So that was also really cool. But so he has announced that he is officially coming to LAFC. Another big name that, I think is a big name, I guess, maybe because I follow Chelsea and I follow Pulisic, so I knew of this player coming here to the United States. Big for MLS to continue to get more prospects, or get not prospects because he's obviously a little bit older, but to get players who are have some name recognition overseas coming here to the MLS. Next piece of news that I think this is pretty important based on what we saw. Fanatics and Panini kind of got into a little bit of a spat. Some people might remember a couple months ago with Fanatics basically taking a couple of Panini employees and bringing them over. But the FTC just basically put into law that they're trying to ban non-competes, which, I mean, I think non-competes are, they're probably one of the, stupidest laws, really, in America. Maybe, I don't know, from a working perspective. Obviously, there's other tons of laws that I'm not going to get into the law on this podcast necessarily, but, for a company to say you can't go work for another company in the same industry isn't really fair, doesn't really make much sense. Like, for a person who is working throughout their career, that really, I understand if they have to sign some sort of NDA that says you can't use some sort of, trade secrets, but it's like, from the sports card perspective, there's nothing revolutionary that either company is really doing that if the other company knew that they were doing would, completely change the way the industry is happening. What's going on in the industry, I don't know exactly here. But it is big because this does mean that now companies can just freely basically move around. They can just move around to whatever companies they want within this industry, which I think is a big deal. I have a feeling like Fanatics is probably looking at this, and they're probably doing that thing like that flies do when they rub their hands together, and they're probably just like, yes, now we can go get they can go get some of the top Panini employees. And I don't know. I mean, I think that there's probably something there where they can't. There's probably some sort of, I don't know, not like a. There's probably some sort of like time period where it's like you can't put in your 2 weeks at Panini and go work at Fanatics, I guess. Like maybe there's like a month or something. I don't know exactly what the law will end up being. But I don't think Fanatics can go to Panini employees and try and get them to come to Fanatics. But if an employee wants to leave either company and go work for the other company, basically what this means is that I think that what I think this means, from my interpretation, is that they're going to be allowed to do that, which I believe. I think as much as workers, I think in this country have really limited amounts of freedom when it comes to companies. This is just something that I think is going to it's going to be good for employees to basically make any choices that they want to go work wherever they want. Third piece of news, I guess. Topps put out their first look at a new case hit that's going to be in 2024 Bowman. It's a Guardians of the Diamond. It looks like they use Ellie De La Cruz as the player for that. Which I'm thinking about it. I guess maybe there are rookies in that. I thought that maybe this is for Bowman base. Maybe this is for Bowman Chrome, which comes out later on in the year, or maybe it's not for Bowman Baseball, because from my understanding, I thought that Bowman Baseball was supposed to be basically just a lot of international prospects and then some other draft prospects and then just a lot of prospects, and that I don't remember I guess there are veterans on that checklist now that I'm thinking about it, but from what I remember, a lot of the rookies, like it was a lot of just veterans, but not many rookie cards. But so this is going to be a case hit, which I don't know. I guess, again, you look at what Topps is doing and you see a lot of people giving them a little bit of flack, based on, I think they've changed their content strategy a little bit. I think I think it's pretty widely known who's running the account, or who is the person kind of in charge of the account. So, you're probably going to see a lot more negative stuff on particular posts that Topps is putting out. I don't know. Case hits, I think, are good. I would like them to be autographed, I guess. I mean, calling it a case hit and having it just be a numbered insert card really doesn't move the needle for me. And it's not to sit here and say I don't care necessarily, but it's like, and again, also I'm also not maybe the target audience for this, so maybe it's not for me, which I think that is also something that I definitely recognize within sports cards, is there's going to be just things that companies are going to come out with that are not for me, and that's okay. So maybe this is something that, I don't know, Bowman collectors or there other collectors, maybe they like it. Based on some of the information I'm seeing, they're all going to be numbered to 5. I don't know if it's just going to be rookies or what it's exactly going to be. I would hope that it's just rookies. If they're going to be calling this a case hit, I'm hoping that the checklist is really like, I don't know, like rookies, and then I guess maybe Ohtani, maybe Trout, Mookie Betts. I mean, really, it's got to be the top of the top for this to be considered a case hit, in my opinion. But I don't know. It's not my cup of tea, if I'm going to be honest. And the last piece of news that I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about probably on this episode, or for the rest of the episode, is going to be a very, very interesting news story about Border Control in Rochester, New York, seized a shipment of counterfeit items, and it just happened that there was a bunch of Victor Wembanyama Prism rookie cards within this shipment. And I do think that The article states that the shipment came from China, with others commenting online with seeing an influx of the Wembanyama our rookie cards rightly. So be careful if you're buying these cards. This also came from WNBA Cards.com at WNBA Cards.com on Twitter is where I saw this post, just to make sure I gave them credit to who I'm sourcing here. And again, yesterday, I think on the podcast, I talked about how fake sports cards aren't super common, and then this story comes out today where it's literally, it's not, I don't know, it's not going to be the 1989 Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck rookie all over again, where there's just tons of them because, the rumor was that Upper Deck just basically, the rumor, conspiracy, whatever you want to call it, is that Upper Deck actually just printed out, like, sheets of this Griffey rookie and just put them into circulation, and, like, all the other rookies really weren't that, they weren't printed the same way, so that's why there's so many Griffey rookies versus every other rookie, like, because if you look at the grading numbers of that Griffey card versus, like, every other player that had a rookie in that 1989 Upper Deck set, it's, like, the Griffey cards are astronomically more. I do hope here that PSA, this is something where PSA and Panini need to make sure they're working together to sniff out which of these cards, like, are real and which ones are fake. I mean, I think that if you're sending in Wembanyama cards, like, I don't think that there's a chance that cards that you bought are, if you open them from a pack, obviously you're not going to have any fake cards. But if you're buying cards from eBay, I don't know. I probably wouldn't be buying any Wembanyama rookies from eBay right now, just based on the fact that, like, if there's a shipment that didn't make it through, like, sure, there's probably 10 other shipments of counterfeit cards that probably did make it through, unfortunately. And yeah, I think that just if you're looking at eBay and you're seeing that, there's just way more Wembanyama, which in general there's going to be more Wembanyama just because he is such his rookie is just like the one that everyone wants to collect for the most part. From this rookie class, because, like, he was, rookie of the, probably going to win rookie of the year. I think Chet Holmgren is in the conversation there. He obviously was in last year's Bowman. He was in last year's Prism, similar to what happened with Ben Simmons, where he was in 2016 Prism, but he won 2017 rookie of the year because he was out for his whole rookie year, which is maybe why people are a little, I don't know. I don't know if there's confusion around that card. I don't really know if people even care about Ben Simmons anymore. I mean, he has had an astronomical decline in his career, if I'm going to be honest here. But if you are buying Wembanyama Prism rookies, I think this is a scenario where I guess, like, I don't know. I just wouldn't be buying them right now, or I would be only buying them from trusted sources, like people that like I would maybe only buy them at shows from people that who they are, like that either they themselves open them from a pack, or, if you can find them on Facebook or something and that the people are opening them from packs and that's why they're selling them, that's where I would go to find those cards. Like, I would stay away from eBay Wembanyama's for, I don't know, a couple months at this point until we really can get it sorted. Like, until PSA or, Panini's never going to come out with any type of statement on this and say, like, send your cards into us. Or, I mean, I think that somebody should step up. Some company should step up and say, send your Wembanyama cards to us. We will authenticate them for free because of this issue. And if I don't know, if it's Panini does it, or it realistically would have to be Panini. I think Panini would have to work with some other company, but I think that for this to happen, Panini would have to be involved somehow, because I think what you'd have to do is you would have to send them in the card, and then they would give you some sort of credit for whatever you paid for the card, for the Panini store. And if, I don't know, if Panini figured out a way to do this, I think it would be really smart where they buy, from breakers or something. I don't know how they would do this, and this is me kind of brainstorming a little bit here. They buy a bunch of, clearly real Wembanyama rookies, and then that way they have an inventory of people who they have an inventory, so that way if people want to send in their Wembanyama and they declare that it is a fake, they can send them a real one. Because if this, if tons of other shipments have come through here, and if Panini can look at eBay and say, well, we know for a fact, like based on whatever sort of data, I'm sure they should have the data here. I don't know if they do, but they should, to say, we know how many of these cards should be listed, and if there's, 10, 20, 30% more than we are projecting that should be listed, that means that there's probably a decent amount of fakes, and that means I think that Panini needs to figure out a way to step up here and either reimburse people for the fake Wembanyama cards, or they need to send them real ones, like do some sort of replacement. And this, I don't know if this, not send them replacements in the sense like they need to print more, just specifically Wembanyama cards, but they need to send them replacements like Panini needs to buy cards that they know are real, or they just need to buy cards and get them. I think that they could do this where they are buying cards from eBay and then they have a stockpile of these cards that, worst case scenario is if they buy 1,000 Wembanyama rookies, let's just say, and 100 of them they find out are fake. Then they have 900 that if people send in their Wembanyama cards, they can then get a Wembanyama card that's actually real, if they find that the one that they bought is fake. I think that would be a good idea for Panini to do. I don't want them to print more of them. I want them to buy them, and authenticate or figure out a way to authenticate and make sure that these things are legit. And then if people have ones that they suspect could be fake, send them into Panini, have them go through some sort of authentication. If they find that it's fake, then they get a real one. They would get a real one because Panini has confirmed that this is a real one. And then, like I said, worst case scenario, if in 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now, they could just figure out a way to sell them. Like I don't think it's wrong for them to sell these cards specifically. I wouldn't want them to do this just regularly, I guess. I don't think they would, but I think if they are trying to authenticate and make sure that someone's having a good experience, and if they accidentally bought one of these fake cards because they thought it was real because so many of them are fake, Panini needs to step up and really do something. Will they do it? Yeah, probably not. But like I said, that's just my idea for Panini for trying to fix some of these mistakes. Well, not mistakes, but fix some of the errors that might be occurring right now because of what might be going on with a lot of these fake Wembanyama cards.